My next guest is someone who probably needs no introduction, but just in case, Connirae Andreas is coming up next. She is amazing. She's probably without her and her husband Steve's contributions, we might not be having this conversation. She and her husband Steve either edited or published or both some of the very early books of NLP, Frogs into Princes, Transformations. She, with her sister Tamara, wrote Core Transformation. And she also, with her husband Steve, brought forth Mark Andreas, who is also a great contribution to the field of NLP. So with no further ado, here she is. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Welcome, Connirae Andreas. It's so good to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to having a conversation.
So you have been around the world of NLP for a long time. Is that fair to say?
That is true. Since 1977, back in the early days before NLP was a thing.
It was before NLP was a thing? It wasn't named NLP yet?
It was called NLP, but hardly anyone had heard of it. We just stumbled across it by chance because a colleague of my husband's happened to meet someone who knew about, a colleague of my husband heard about it, and then he told us a little, and right away we started going to the trainings, and we were just hooked on it right away.
I give you guys, you and your husband Steve, a ton of credit actually for me and other people knowing about NLP, because you really are responsible for some of the very early books. Some of the basic books of NLP are because of you. Am I correct about that? Frogs into Princes and others?
Yes, absolutely. When we got involved, it was such a small club. There were only not very many people had heard of it yet, and there were very few written materials. Let's see, I think Structure of Magic 1 was out, maybe 2. Some of these books, but they weren't very accessible.
Mm-hmm.
They were written in a technical way, more like a grammar textbook would be written.
Yeah.
So it wasn't spreading. And so once my husband, Steve Andreas, and I got involved, Steve was the one actually, who thought of making, he realized there really should be books about this. It needs to get out to the public.
Yeah.
So this is good stuff. It needs to become available, and there aren't the kind of books available that need to be, that are accessible to just an ordinary person.
That are accessible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because as anyone who's ever been to a NLP seminar, they're anything but dry. They are funny. They're fun. They're Richard Bandler's hilarious.
Yes. Yeah, Richard and John were so entertaining, and they'd have this sort of song and dance playing off each other. So we thought that presenting that in book form would make it accessible. And so Steve proposed that to Richard and John, and then basically the two of us, they accepted. They were skeptical it would work,
Mm-hmm.
but they were willing to let us do it if we went to all the work. So we got recordings of their trainings and got transcripts, and it takes a lot of editing to actually turn a transcript into something that's readable.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I know that firsthand. Yes.
So we worked on them, and then the result was Frogs into Princes, and then that was the first one.
Yep.
And Steve took the lead on that one. And then the next one was Transformations. I was more excited about doing that. Steve kind of, at first he was going, "Oh, I don't know about that." And I'm going, I'll take it on.
Yeah, I will tell you something. That is one of my favorite books. I go back to that book often.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, because it's for me, that was the transition from NLP to Ericksonian hypnosis, and it really explained
Oh, yes.
in a way
Yeah.
how to get into that.
Yeah. And yeah, NLP offers such a great, more precise way of doing hypnosis, just like it does with everything.
Hmm.
That's,
Hmm.
that's to me, NLP in a nutshell is it's the underlying science of all this stuff,
Yeah.
it's the underlying precision. It's the how to that
Yeah.
most approaches missed until NLP came along.
That's true. That's true. Hey, let me ask you a question. I talked to David Gordon recently, and I asked him, and he assured me that the following statement was not true. Um, but, but I heard that in one of your books, I think Frogs and the Princes, there's a thing talking about eye accessing cues that you look up to the left to get visual constructed and up to the right to get visual remembered, or the opposite. but, but but he said it says in that book that this is true for everybody unless they're A, left-handed, or B, from the Basque region of France, in which case it's reversed. Where did that statement come from, that the Basque region of France thing?
Um, that sounds familiar. But it's not quite like that. It's
No.
a little more subtle. I think it is in Frogs into Princes, but I would have to go look to find out, or possibly Transformations. I
Yes.
think it is in one of the books, but it's not that all left-handed people are reversed. It's that if
Right.
someone's left-handed, they're more likely to be
What
reversed.
about the Basque region of France? Because I had heard that was a joke that was actually taken out of context. It was a joke, but because it was printed that way, people said, "Oh, Basque region of France. That's very interesting."
I have no knowledge about it. If it's in the book, it's because Richard and John said so.
Okay.
And we all know sometimes they take a few liberties.
Okay. Yes. And I was also told, and David assures me this is not true, that the joke was a joke because it was a joke about Leslie Cameron Bandler, who was from the Basque region, or her ancestors were from the Basque region of France, and it was like poking fun at her. And David assures me that that is categorically not true. She's not, nor are any
Well,
of her ancestors from the Basque region of France.
David probably remembers it right. And, David was closer there at the scene, at the hub of everything in Santa Cruz than Steve and I. I was a little envious of those people right out there at the hub.
Mm.
Actually, along with Richard and John and Leslie and Judith and David Gordon and Robert Dilts. And there were a couple of other people, but those were the key people that we connected with who were part of that hub in Santa Cruz. And David was very much a part of that initial Santa Cruz NLP club.
Right.
So I think he has a lot of insights about the really early days
Yeah.
from that perspective.
I
And
certainly
then,
believed him about Leslie Cameron Bender at that point.
yes, and they've stayed good friends.
Yeah, yeah,
They've been good friends. They continue good friends to this day.
yeah,
And
exactly.
now it makes me think though, there was a time when I was no longer envious of the people in the hub in Santa Cruz. And that's when Mount St. Dotar happened,
Saint Dote.
that's what we called it back in the early days. People who were there would laugh when we would say that, but the organization in Santa Cruz, the key, and they called themselves DOTAR, Division
Right,
of Training and Research,
right.
and it was all a group until it wasn't. There was a time when sort of there are a lot of very strong personalities, as you know, involved there. And some were, shall we say, easier to get along with than others. And but there, at about the time that Richard and Leslie split up, and then also John and Judith, and then Richard and John's split up. It's like none of the main leaders worked together anymore after that time,
Hmm.
and didn't speak to each other even for the most part. And so there were these separate groups that went, and it was painful in one sense, but it was maybe a blessing and a good thing in another, because different groups did go their own way and sort of it led to more evolving NLP in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, different groups specialized in different things.
So tell me more about you and your husband, Steve. So it was an acquaintance of Steve that turned him onto it, and you came along as well. Was that acquaintance one of those core people?
Yes, it was a colleague of Steve's that introduced him. We were at a conference in San Francisco. It was a humanistic psychology. It was Association for Humanistic Psychology conference,
Okay.
and also a Gestalt therapy conference. My husband has a background in Gestalt therapy, and he already had a following and was a leader in the field of Gestalt therapy. He had written and published books in Gestalt, and he had, including Fritz Perls's main works.
Wow.
He had published in and Out the Garbage Pail.
It's the first book I ever read on this.
Gestalt therapy verbatim was the main one that he published.
Wow. So he didn't go by Steve Andreas at that time either, did he?
No, we weren't married yet. He was John O. Stevens then.
John O. Stevens.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
took my last name when we got married.
So tell me about that. That's unusual. Were
So,
you total hippies at that point? Or what's the deal?
well, we were hippies at that point, but so that was perhaps part of it. When we decided to get married, we well, there's the several versions of the joking answer. What one version is like, well, we decided to get married, and we decided we both wanted to have the same last name. We agreed on that, but we weren't sure whose last name to pick. So we thought we'd put it up to a vote. And since all my relatives were there right then, we asked them what they thought, and it came out Andreas. But that's just kidding. We didn't really do that. But yeah, I guess there's multiple answers. I think Steve sort of thought it was a fun thing to do, and to because he liked he liked doing things differently, and sort of and being a little daring and bold, and I think it kind of appealed to him to sort of do this sort of feminist thing, and he was going to take my name. Also, he never really liked his name, neither the first nor the last. So his original birth name was John O. Stevens,
Right.
and then but people started calling. He didn't like John because he said, well, there are lots of bathrooms named after, and I don't like sharing a name with the bathroom. So people called him Steve as sort of a nickname for Stevens, and he liked that. So all of his friends were already calling him Steve, but then Steve Stevens was always kind of weird. It was awkward.
Right.
So to him, it seemed pretty natural to just shift to Steve Andreas when we got married.
What did the O stand for?
Oliver.
Okay, so John Oliver Stevens.
Yeah.
Does he, as Steve Andreas, does he have a middle name? Is it like Steve Oliver Andreas?
No, he never really used his middle name. I never had a middle name. He never had a middle name. We didn't give our kids middle names.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How about
So
that? How many kids do you have?
we have three. Yeah, still three. Yeah.
Still three.
Yeah, they're grown, long since grown, and all over the world. And one of the three is also an NLP trainer.
I know Mark, yes.
He was very happy. You know, we're happy that each of them went their own way and chose their own life path. But it was pleasing that at least one of them decided to choose to be an NLP trainer. So he's a trainer and therapist and coach, and he does a great job.
He does, yeah. He's a great guy. And I've not met your other two, but one is a doctor in New York, I understand.
Yes, one is a doctor in New York City, and a urologist, as I mentioned to you, just completed his residency working there in Manhattan. The other one is a chemist working for Max Planck Laboratories in Germany.
Uh-huh.
So he and his family are in Germany. So the other two are more scientist types.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I like to think that all of us are actually kind of scientist types, because NLP is a kind of science of personal growth, of personal transformation. It's about precise experience and finding step-by-step ways that are replicable, so that it's reliable, that anyone can get the same results, just like you can get results by striking a match and it's dependable, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really a science too.
I completely agree with you. And one of the things that I think has also been really useful over the years is the contributions that you guys have made in developing NLP and moving it further beyond what it just was back in the day with Bandler and Grinder. But you developed this core transformation model that I think is just so amazing. And now you're working on something else as well. Do you want to?
Of the wholeness work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, I think our trajectory was, when we got involved, both Steve and I felt like this is really wonderful. Let's just learn everything we can. And we spent years doing that. And then we shifted over to this role of, okay, pretty quickly we moved into the role of, well, we can be of service here. We can start making this available to other people. We can make it more precise. We can make it more, really clear, and pass on clear and precise versions for other people. So that, and then we started realizing we can develop stuff too. So when we got to that phase, and for me personally, that phase came because I felt I came to the limit of what the classic NLP methods could do.
Mhm.
So, and it was really in my own life that I felt like, okay, I can get results with people in seminars and so on, but for me, I'm not getting much results. So, and I would be always feeling like, okay, always the bridesmaid, never the bride sort of thing, in terms of me being able to really get results for myself.
Really?
And so it was out of the desire to have something that would work with me. I started exploring how can I go. I became convinced that we needed to somehow get to a deeper level of experience than what NLP could do so far. So that's what I think both core transformation does, and then wholeness work perhaps goes even farther, but it's going to this deeper level of experience. So it builds on what NLP already knew: parts work, positive intent, but then it takes that perhaps to the end result. It uses as you know, it uses the question, what do you want, recursively,
Mhm.
so that it really accesses often a profound state of well-being within people surprisingly quickly.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I don't know much about the wholeness process, but the core
Yeah,
transformation I've done dozens of times, both with clients and also with myself, and it never fails to produce.
that's the thing. Yeah, and we're doing some research now. We've been working with a team that has been doing research on it for the last 5 or so years. And the research is showing that it's just as reliable, it's effective with almost any beginning difficulty people have. It quickly opens the doorway to this profound and transformative state of being, that then we can utilize to transform experience.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I was really pleased when that sort of came out of me. Do you want to hear the story behind that, about
I
the?
was just about to ask you this for the story. Yes, I do. I want to hear the story.
Okay, okay. Well, this was my best work in terms of development has come out of frustration and even desperation, we could say it.
Oh,
And I think that was an important part of me developing something new, because I was at the point where I was really willing to let go of everything I thought I knew each time. And that was essential for both the development of core transformation and the wholeness work. Not just using existing NLP models and then applying to them to something new, but to actually let go of all the NLP models and just kind of go, okay, now hands tied behind my back,
right.
now what comes out. And so what I did was I gave myself the task of working with people who had tried everything they knew on their life's biggest issue, and nothing had worked. So I announced to a bunch of people who were studying with us, that I was doing this. I'm open to clients. You've got your life's biggest issue. You've worked with it, with everything you know in NLP and every other kind of change method too, and nothing has worked yet, And then I would tell them, only half joking. And so the only thing I'm going to promise you is that we're going to have a session together. My agreement with you is I'm not going to do anything I know to do. And you can go home when you have what you want. And so that's what we did. And it actually worked out. The very first person who came I believe his issue was a volatile temper. He would start losing it with a stepdaughter, and he was concerned it was on the verge of costing him his relationship with his wife, plus his stepdaughter. Plus, he actually felt bad about it. He didn't want to be mean, but it just was coming out that way. And so we started. So I didn't know what I was going to do. Again, I just went, I'm not going to do anything I know. And we're just going to start talking. And then you can go home and you have what you want. And very quickly within that, what emerged was what I then called what I later called core transformation. It didn't have a name ahead of time. I didn't know what happened. But it very quickly, once we got rolling, it was only a matter of minutes until we got to this place of revealing this profound state of being inside. I don't remember what he called it. Maybe peace, maybe oneness, maybe presence. Sometimes people call it oneness with God, but whatever he called it, I right away recognized, wow, I could see it. He was glowing, I recognized this is a profound state. And I immediately, it also immediately came to me what to do so that state could become transformative in the life area of concern for him.
Wow, cool.
It's not just a matter of anchoring or something, it's a different kind of thing. And so
were you taking notes at the time? Because whenever I do core transformation, it's pretty note heavy.
Yes,
yeah?
I was taking notes.
Okay.
Yeah. What I was doing is I was tracking each thing he said, my client said, and I was listening for presuppositions in everything he said.
Interesting.
And I also was recording the session. So then, but I also knew what I was doing afterwards. In retrospect, I understood the structure pretty quickly. And so then I was going, I explained it to Steve and he goes, well, do you think he'd work on anybody else? And I'm going, I don't know. I'll find out soon, And so then when the next person comes in, I try now I've got this structure and I tried guiding through the same steps and the same kind of profound state came out. And
so basically you did it once and then you had the structure.
And then kept doing it.
Kept doing it. Wow.
Yeah. Now the parental timeline reimprinting that came later. That was in maybe the 4th or 5th or 6th session.
Okay.
Out of the first
refinements to it, yeah.
Out of the first 12 people that I tested this with, let's see if I can remember right. Out of 12, I think it was 3 went. 5 of them said it was profound and it sort of changes everything. Not just the problem. It's like everything.
Not too shabby way to spend the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 4 of them said it's subtle but profound.
Okay.
It wasn't quite as strong. It was so they still used the profound word, but they also used the subtle word. And then 3 of them said no difference.
Oh, really?
So yeah, that was after a single session.
Right.
With their life's biggest issue where they'd tried everything. These were tough clients, all of them.
Yeah.
I wanted to work with tough clients because I wanted somebody who would force me to get to something that might work with me. Really.
And did it?
Well, it did, but I was slower. I was more like one of the 3, and where I didn't notice a profound difference right away.
And were you guiding yourself through it, or was Steve guiding you through it, or?
I guided myself.
Okay.
And what I started to become aware of is, NLP used to be thought of as Charles Faulkner calls it the one and done principle. You
Right.
do you do something once and you're done. You
Right.
solve.
Yeah.
And it works that way for the phobia technique, but there are other things that's not necessarily the best way to approach. With a phobia, it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, well, it's not going to help you to necessarily do it 10 times, But with core transformation, what I started discovering is that there are often with big, deeper issues, it often is helpful to have multiple sessions where we work, because some big issues, especially things like depression, for example, it's not a single session kind of thing. Core transformation, I've had many people diagnosed with depression or anxiety who told me that core transformation is the first thing that's helped them. But if it's depression and anxiety, sometimes they say one and done. I did it once and it all changed.
Mhm.
Other times they say it took a few sessions. With depression, it almost always takes a few sessions, sometimes quite a few,
Mhm.
because depression is usually something that has multiple layers, multiple parts. It's not
Sure.
a single issue problem.
Yeah. And how did you know that it finally worked with you?
Because I started experiencing this subtle but profound. That started happening for me too. I kept trying it,
Was it a particular issue that you tried everything for and hadn't gotten any success with? Did it meet that
Well,
criteria?
I can't remember anymore which
Ah,
issues I was working with in my own life, but they probably had to do with my relationship with my husband,
uh-huh.
honest, to just be, honest about it. That's where I found a lot of my, I often tell my clients, and because I think it's true, being married is a potentially a spiritual practice.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
it's a growth practice.
it is.
I mean, I don't know, you're married too, maybe you have a whole different perspective. And it kind of it kind of depends maybe on the two people involved. But for Steve and I, definitely, we complemented each other really well. We very much appreciated and loved each other. And I think we were a really good partnership for each other. We together could do more and contribute more, way more than either one of us could have alone, and we just had fun together. So there were a lot of pluses, but we also really challenged each other, and sometimes we really annoyed and frustrated each other.
Mhm.
you know and so it probably had something to do with that, with my feelings and wanting to feel more resourceful, even if he would do something that I might consider hurtful.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah, I understand.
probably, I don't remember, probably something to do with that. And I
Yeah.
started feeling like I was making progress and feeling more. I remember the day that I started doing this as a daily practice, core transformation.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And because it's like, why not? It's like getting your massage every day. It's like so an easy way to experience this really wonderful state of being every day. And um, and then also knowing that that is leading to a gradual transformation that is positive. I'm becoming more integrated. It's
Mhm.
not just that I'm feeling in a good state. And that's really important to realize too, that the way core transformation works, it's not just about anchoring ourselves into a good state. That is a bit of an override to the system. It works for a while, but there's some point at which, if we keep wanting to progress, we need real integration. And so core transformation leads to real complete integration, where what was a part now becomes fully a part of the whole. It's not
Wow.
separate anymore. It's all
So do you
connected.
recommend that then for most of your core transformation clients, is that you recommend it, then it becomes a daily practice?
I do. Not everyone wants to take that on. So I definitely don't push it on people who aren't interested. But I will often ask someone, would you like to have me help you learn to do this as a daily practice?
Hmm.
If they say yes, then I do. And if they say no, then I respect that. Then they can just keep paying me. And actually, both ways, I think when both ways, people tend to want to come back. If a coach can keep helping somebody become more evolved and have an ever more happy life,
Yeah,
they keep coming back. And
I
with
do.
core transformation, it's like that. It goes beyond fixing problems into into having an increasingly happier life.
Yeah, and it's truly organic because it's coming from, we've always said this, that, the people have the resources inside themselves, that we're not fixing them, we're helping them find and get access to their own resources.
Yeah.
Always true. It seems even more so with core transformation, that you're getting into that core state that only is accessible from within and
Yeah.
getting access to that. So seems like a very organic evolution, sort of,
Yeah.
that's the right word, but generative sort of change that takes place from the inside out with core transformation. So I can see it, that it would be really, a powerful thing to do it on a daily basis. I just never thought of it.
Yeah, yeah. And when people, yeah, it just really, people start discovering that many problems just sort of fall by the way. They sort of dissolve, they sort of melt away on their own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it
definitely.
does, it means that it's easier to go to what I would consider the next level of evolution. We start noticing more subtleties of ways that we can evolve. It becomes less about fixing problems and more about more well-being, more creativity, more
Yeah,
capacity
yeah,
for
yeah.
problem solving.
Yeah, true. Because problems seem to be just basically course corrections. And so the less you've got to getting off
Yeah.
course because you're closer aligned with your path, then the
Mhm.
less problem solving you have to do, it would seem.
Yeah, yeah,
So how does
absolutely.
that tie into wholeness?
Um, uh, Let me get there in a second. I
Okay.
realized I promised you the story, and I
Oh,
and
yes,
I
yes.
meant on a detour myself. The story was, you asked me about how core transformation started working for me, and one of the evidences for that was kind of fun for me. I was my kids were young at this point. When I discovered core transformation or developed core transformation, I think my youngest was 2,
Oh,
so they
wow.
were in grade school. And one day when I was there walking on the sidewalks to pick them up from school, the school administrator was there, and he walked by me and he stopped me and he said, Connirae, what is it you're doing? These days it seems like you're always kind of glowing. And and I'm going, oh, that's the core transformation. I explained to him a little bit. That's probably just the core transformation. It's not that I was trying to glow or anything, but he that would be too much work. And as you said, the point of this is all to just be organic and let things, just happen in an organic way.
Yeah.
But the fact that he noticed a shift in my disposition was interesting to me.
Yeah. Because I'm assuming that's from a bit of a distance. He's the school administrator. I mean, it wasn't, you didn't have
Yeah,
deep
yeah, I
conversations.
knew him. He wasn't a close friend or anything,
Right.
but I was on committees with the school. I was active as a parent, and so I knew him from committees with the
Yeah.
school. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Cool.
So you asked me, what was the question about wholeness work?
How does this lead to wholeness? How did this
Ah,
core transformation lead to what you're doing now mostly? Because you mostly are now focused on the wholeness process. Is that correct?
now I'm mostly teaching the wholeness work, and my colleagues Tamara and Mark are they're really managing and at the head of the core transformation training series, which we have developed this. They have developed a really good program for training coaches in core transformation, so that and we're researching it too, and the research is showing that our coaches are able to consistently get extremely good results with a wide range of issues. So the research is really strong already.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm shifted to wholeness work. And so how did that happen?
How did it happen and what the heck is it?
What the heck is it? Yeah, yeah, those are related, how it happened and what the heck it is. Um, so I'll give a short, and anybody who gets intrigued by this, there's a free video intro that I have on our website at andreasnlp.com.
Okay,
It's under the resources section. There's a free intro to wholeness work
great.
that'll guide you. It'll guide you through the first steps of the process, and you can see even a mini demo there.
Great.
Um, but the way it happened, oh, how far back shall I start in the backstory? In a way, it started with Milton Erickson.
Oh, that's okay. That's far back. Go ahead.
And in a way, it started with a life crisis, a different life crisis that I was going through. And maybe, yeah, the Erickson story is kind of fun. Maybe I'll just give a really short version of that, if that sounds.
Yes, if I was sitting down, I would be on the edge of my seat.
Okay. Yeah. So Milton Erickson, amazing guy, amazing hypnotist. So I feel really fortunate. I was able to spend 2 weeks with him. That's
Wow.
a short amount of time, but it was enough time that it profoundly changed the direction of my life. And the first time my husband and I went together. The second time I went with a small group of therapist friends, and they invited me to go along. And towards the end of Erickson's life, he wasn't really working with clients much anymore. He was devoting his time to small groups of teaching seminars, small groups of therapists. And he would do these teaching seminars where we would come for 1 week at a time and spend a half a day with him for 5 days. And he would mostly just tell stories about his work with clients.
Right.
But you start to have the feeling he's doing other things too. Milton Erickson, he uses his stories. He uses stories with his clients to help clients change. He uses stories about clients with us.
Right.
So before going, I was in this kind of relationship crisis where this was before Steve and I got married, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to marry this guy or if maybe we should split up. I was kind of thinking it should go one way or the other. And I really wasn't sure which was the best choice. So I was feeling this angst, like I wouldn't be happy either way. It's like, oh, neither one feels right. We could be together, but it's not quite right, but we could be apart, but then I'd miss him, So I said to him when I arrived, my friend who set this up said, well, you should ask him for a private session. And she had asked for a private session with him earlier than that, to help her with her marriage. She was married, and actually he helped her get a divorce. Decide to get a divorce. It was the session with him where she became clear that's what she wanted to do.
Okay.
And my husband and I both knew her and her husband. Well, my now husband, my then boyfriend. Steve and I both knew her. We knew her husband. And we always kind of went, gosh, the two of them don't really quite fit together. So it wasn't surprising to us that it wasn't like he made her get a divorce, but my sense was he helped her see clearly what was right for her.
Right. Got it.
And she made that choice. So I went there with some trepidation, thinking, gosh, I don't know what he's going to, what's going to happen here. But I said to him when the first morning, I said, would it be possible for you to see me privately? And he looks at me, nods, goes, yes. And he smiles, and then he looks away. And that's it. And I was immediately confused, going, well, how do I set up the session? What happens next? But no, now we were all being ushered into the room, and we just have our little teaching seminar with Milton Erickson. And so I was confused, and he was playing me the whole week. In retrospect, I know that. At the time, I was just confused. So and I was going, well, what does he mean? He said yes, but I don't know what to do. And so various points in the week, he would say something about working with he would use somebody as a demo subject. So I think, okay, maybe he'll use me for a demo subject. Maybe that's what he means. So I noticed he always worked with the person sitting to the left of him. So the next morning I got there early and I sat in that chair, but he didn't choose me for a demo subject. And then another day, okay, I was kind of giving up, and another day he did choose me for a demo subject. So I go, oh, great, it's going to happen now. But nothing happened. It was just a very routine demonstration. I couldn't even tell anything happened. So every day I was kind of getting my hopes up. Every day I'd be disappointed. And then finally, on the very last day, I completely gave up that I was going to get any benefit. So I thought, rather than trying to go into a trance like I was trying to do the whole rest of the time, I was trying to, okay, I'll be a cooperative subject, let my eyes flutter and all this stuff. So rather than try to be a cooperative subject, I was just going to stay awake, and I was going to at least watch him work with other people, because with my NLP skills, I thought I could watch and notice some of the marking out, and perhaps he was just doing things to entertain me and distract my conscious mind. But I thought I was seeing him do some interesting things. And then about an hour and a half into the morning, all of a sudden I was just sitting there, nothing. And all of a sudden it was as if I was a completely different person within the span of 1 second,
Hmm.
like something came over me or through me or whatever. I was a different person. And I was sitting there going, whoa, I have never experienced this ever in my life before. It was a kind of deep well-being, a kind of this experience of knowingness that everything's fine, everything will be fine. It's not possible for anything not to be fine. There is just this deep well-being and peace and equilibrium. It's hard to put it into words. I didn't have words, even less so at that time. I just knew I wasn't feeling the way I'd ever felt before. And I thought at the time, oh, this is probably what everybody else experiences all the time, and I'm finally experiencing it. But anyway, as I was experiencing this, I looked across at Milton Erickson, and I kind of going, does he have something to do with this? Does he know? Does he do? And at that moment, he looked at me and he said, and your unconscious mind has just made an important decision.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, whoa, okay, so he definitely knows, and I am pretty sure he set this up. I have no idea how. And then I'm thinking, but I don't really know what has happened, And then he said, and you don't know what it is. And then I had the thought, if he offered a private session now, I'm not sure if I would have anything to work with. And then he said to me, and do you still feel the need to work with me privately? So I was going, I was really blown away,
Yes,
first the change, and then the way he seemed to be tracking my thought process as I was attempting to process what it was, just step by step, he was with me. I was going, whoa, this is just a little too much coincidence. And since then, I've heard people say that he can read from sensory, not by being a psychic, but with his sensory acuity skills, he's actually able to read people's internal dialogue pretty accurately. So it's possible that's part of what was happening there. I don't know, but the state change was wonderful. And then, so after that, I did have the feeling like I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do about my relationship. I didn't know if I would stay or go or what. But I felt this well-being, and I felt this kind of bubbling, percolating happening inside. Like when I would rest or go to sleep, I'd feel like there's just something happening inside. And it all seemed fine. And I wasn't concerned. I knew that when I needed to know what to do, I would know. And so I wasn't impatient about it. It just, and then within about 2 weeks, I knew what to do. The answer came to me. It was clear, and it came easily without any angst. It was, and it wasn't a simple yes, no. It was more like, okay, for us to be together as a partnership, I became aware there are 3 things that would be important to me. We need to be on the same page about these 3 things. And so I shared them with Steve, and I felt unattached about it, in the sense of I didn't want him to say yes to those 3 things unless he felt that would be good for him too. And earlier, I can't remember ever having felt like that in my life, where I was that ready to just, I wanted him to make the best choice for him. And I was clear that this is what would be important for me. And that's it, no more, And so he thought about it, and his choice, I think, is probably clear. Yes, we
Yeah,
did get married.
I think I could guess what it
Yeah,
was.
we did get married. But then after that, a few months after that, my feeling of complete well-being, complete knowing everything's fine, everything will be fine, clarity, it started unraveling, and I started feeling more attached to things, different things again in my life. It didn't stick.
Yeah.
And that's what, but I knew now what was possible, and I knew I needed to find a way to have more of that.
Okay. And that's where you started figuring out how to do this wholeness process.
And both core transformation and wholeness,
Okay.
really. It first led to core transformation because I think that's why, with that background reference experience, that's why it's sort of like my being knew where it was going
Yeah.
and could find the way more easily because I'd been there, I'd experienced it. And then with wholeness work, that came to that prompted a whole different level of inner work. It was another personal crisis experience that I had that was of a different nature.
Mm.
I had sort of you could say, a health crisis or energetic crisis. I don't know which would be more accurate, but I started maybe all of the above. But I had this experience. It was as if there was this strong, powerful electric current going through my body 24/7. It never stopped. I couldn't sleep through it. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything. I was basically non-functional.
Mm.
And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this was. But I actually thought maybe this was dying, since maybe this is what dying is like, because I thought this is so intense. I'm not sure my body can withstand it. I
Right.
didn't really expect to be around much longer. So, um, but I never died. So, but, so that's the good news, I guess.
Good.
But
Yeah. That's good.
I did have the sense that if I have a chance of surviving, I need to again kind of let go of everything I think I know and really start fresh, and maybe even more completely
Mm.
just open myself to maybe this sounds weird, but whatever the universe is trying to teach me here, if
Mm.
there is something, I need to let go of everything I think I know and just be open
Yeah.
and let that come in.
No.
So that was the beginning of wholeness work. And I started exploring I thought, I'm already familiar with NLP. I know what everybody's doing in NLP. At that time, that was possible and that was true. Now it's not even possible. But I know what's going on with therapy. Background training as a clinical psychologist. I know, so I thought maybe it's time to explore in the field of spirituality and
Mm.
see, is there anything people here know that maybe we could learn from?
Yeah.
And so I approached it more from the experience standpoint, not from the belief standpoint. So
Sure.
just like we always do with NLP, really, we're approaching it from, okay, what is the actual experience people have? And so I read accounts of people who had awakenings or these, and I started finding people with experiences kind of similar to mine,
Mhm.
and that was some degree of comfort to me. Um, and anyway, I ended up on this path of, especially, I was drawn to certain teachers, perhaps a little more than others. And I was drawn towards the ones who were more about experience and less about theory and beliefs. And I was drawn to Ramana Maharshi, who was one of the great sages from India from the last century, and his students.
Mhm.
Um, and Ramana Maharshi had this teaching. He had his own experience of awakening. And then what I started noticing is that these teachers, they've all got experiences of awakening. And then it seems like this gives them certain credibility. People come to them hoping that they can also have this kind of experience of awakening. And if it's a useful kind of awakening, it leads to being able to function better in the world, in my view. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean you go off, just sit in a state of bliss all day. But it leads to being able to be present without the suffering, to be able to contribute more, have more well-being. I think for the good spiritual teachers, it's the best ones. It's not just about something. It's not about what we might think is enlightenment. It's about a shift in consciousness, like what I experienced with Milton Erickson.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, it occurred to me that maybe that was the same thing. And it never occurred. Milton Erickson never called this anything spiritual.
All right.
And,
Yeah.
and I think actually Erickson was only capable of that later on in his life. There aren't very many accounts of him getting that kind of a change with people.
Hmm.
And I think it was only at the end of his life that he had that ability and that capability to do that. And that's my guess. So anyway, for me, it was about experience. And the experience that I had with Erickson was being able to have a clarity about what I want and need in my life, being able to be clear and kind to other people, act without attachment. So, and when the good spiritual teachers, the authentic ones, when they spoke about awakening, it was in that same way. It was like, it's a shift in consciousness such that life is easier.
Yeah.
It's not about the personal drama anymore. A lot of that stuff just doesn't really matter. And
so this is so very interesting to me. And what I again love about what you've done here is you've kind of left a trail. You've left a way for us to get there too, in a codified sort of manner, in order to be able to access that. It's not just a story like, gosh, I wish I could have gone back to Erickson's den there and been in that room so I could do that too. It's like, yeah, and do this, follow this path, do this,
yes,
this process, and you can perhaps get there too.
Yeah, Doug, I like that way you're putting it, leaving the trail of the breadcrumbs so that anyone can get there. That's kind of how I think of it too.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think it's a different thing too. This I came to understand later. It's like the reason it fell apart when Erickson guided me to it, I believe the reason is because he did it to me. He did it for me.
Interesting.
And I wasn't consciously participating. It just happened to me. And this is, you being a hypnotist, you might have your own perspective on this. I'm curious about it. But being a hypnotist, well, Erickson, as you know, was hypnotist. He was an amazing innovator in shifting from a very authoritarian kind of hypnosis into a more inviting kind of hypnosis.
Right.
But the piece he kept was the idea that we have to bypass the conscious mind to change happen more easily. We've got to bypass the conscious mind, and then we can get in there and make changes. As long as we keep the person's conscious mind out of there, because if the conscious mind comes in, it'll mess it up. So that's, and so that keeping that separation between the conscious and unconscious, I think that's why it fell apart for me. Like my conscious mind hadn't changed and it was able to reestablish its old, less useful patterns.
Yeah.
So I think the way core transformation and wholeness work go the next step, build on Erickson's work and go the next step, is that they actually include the conscious mind, and that instead of bypassing it, we include it, and it also becomes the source of the well-being, and it becomes also the doorway to the beloved, as they would call it in the spiritual circles. We don't have to bypass it. We use every single thing as a breadcrumb to get there to that same state.
It's great. I love this. This is fantastic. I'm going to take your wholeness workshop. I must learn more.
I'd so love to have you there.
It's going to happen. But this is so interesting because yes, hypnosis. I've been doing hypnosis for 35, 40, I don't know, gosh, going on, 40 years, getting closer and closer every day. And it also was always about the conscious mind will mess it up. It's the basis of hypnosis, but it's also the basis of meditation. Meditation has always been that, why do we do this mantra? Why do we do Om Namah Shivaya over and over and over again? It's to shut up the conscious mind and that yammering, clattering, conscious mind, and get back to the place inside where there's silence, where you're in touch with the source kind of thing. So they're very parallel. I remember Stephen Walensky talking about after he came back from India in a long period of time that he was there, 6 years or whatever, living in an ashram, where he said that the state that they refer to over there as samadhi, and the state that Milton Erickson referred to as a therapeutic trance, he said were the same state.
Yes.
Different, ways of talking about them, but they were the same place inside. When you get there, it's the same place. It's the namaste state.
Yeah. That's a great observation. Yeah, great observation, Doug, about the similarity also with meditation practice, because I have had many meditators tell me a similar thing. And some people who've found meditation difficult have said, oh, it's easier for me to do wholeness work because I don't have to try to ignore my conscious mind thoughts.
Right.
I just include them all, and it all becomes the doorway. So it's easier. It's more organic, as was the word you used for it. It's more.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love this. And, I think it's you probably are onto something when you said that it was because Milton sort of did it for you and said, here, come with me. And then, but eventually he wasn't there anymore. And, your conscious mind had to be involved in it. It didn't know that pathway. So it couldn't do its job, which is to think about it and guide you.
It's an interesting thing you say that, because when things started unraveling for me and I was no longer in this kind of well-being state, I immediately scheduled another time to go back to see him.
Uh-huh.
And then shortly before I was scheduled to go, a phone call came. It was Jeff Zeig, and you can guess. And I could guess from Jeff's tone, Erickson had just passed away. So I never got my extra trip back so that he could wave his magic wand again. But in retrospect, now I go, oh, that was perfect for me, because it meant I was on my own resources to find the way back that maybe everybody can take. Not just, we don't all have to go sit and be so so lucky we can sit right there with Milton Erickson, have him do his magic wand trick. And then have him have to repeat it, Instead, we find, and I believe this is what the true evolution of consciousness is about. It's what it requires. And I noticed it in the teachings of the spiritual teachers I most respect too. They would talk about this, having their students sit with them and for a while, and then there would always be a point where they would send them off on their own, where they would have to sort of claim it. To find it within themselves, not just that they could get there when they're sitting in the circle with the teacher.
Right.
It was still harder because they didn't give them a way to do it.
Right.
So that's what wholeness work is, and core transformation too, to some extent too. Both of them, they're a way. It gives the step by step, so we can all find our way. And I have come to believe that to truly make shift to transform our consciousness, it takes this choice, stepping forward and going, I'm signing up for this. I'm doing this. I'm participating in this. It's not work. It feels more like a relaxing of effort, really. But in the same way, if you get into the hot tub, it feels relaxing, but it's still you getting into the hot tub. That step. So
beautiful. Hey, listen, I know that we have been on here for about an hour. I'm not actually sure exactly the time, but close to an hour for certain. So I don't want to take too much more of your time, but thank you so much for doing this. And
I really appreciate it. I hope I can get kind of excited talking about these things. I hope I haven't gone on too long. It's fun for me to hear your observations and thoughts about it all too, Doug.
That's great. This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.